Hello, everyone. In Bali, most people wear masks when we ride motorbike. Because of the pollutions, on the long line of the traffic jams, cars and trucks exhaust and people also exhaust. Pollution is a major global issue with significant consequences for human health, the environment, and economies. Today's podcast is about pollution's hidden cost. Stay tuned.
Ever choked on a lungful of smog in traffic? Or walked on a beach littered with plastic? That's pollution hitting home, and today we're taking a deep dive into its hidden costs.
We often focus on what we can see, smog-filled skies or mountains of trash. But the truly damaging costs are often invisible, playing out over years and generations.
You've got a ton of research here, and one thing is clear. Pollution is directly linked to serious health problems. Not just a cough, but life-altering issues.
Absolutely. Air pollution in Delhi, for example, is so severe that it's estimated to reduce lifespans by almost 10 years.
Wow, 10 years just from breathing the air. It's like an invisible enemy. And this isn't just happening in far-off places, is it? We all remember the lead contamination in Flint, Michigan, and the devastating effects on children.
Precisely. Lead, a neurotoxin, impairs brain development, especially in children. Flint is a stark reminder that pollution can hit close to home.
A leading lung surgeon, Dr. Arvind Kumar, calls air pollution a public health emergency. It's a wake-up call, right?
He's spot on. And the health impacts are just one piece of the puzzle. Pollution also has a ripple effect on our economies.
The research shows that air pollution alone is costing the global economy trillions of dollars annually. Trillions.
It's a mind-boggling figure. Healthcare costs explode when pollution makes people sick. Industries like tourism and agriculture suffer. Add in the lost productivity from illness and environmental damage, and it's a massive economic hit.
It's like pollution is robbing us blind. And it's not just a problem for future generations, it's impacting us right now.
The head of the International Monetary Fund, Dr. Kristalina Georgieva, emphasizes that pollution is an economic problem with huge societal costs. It's not just an environmental issue, it's deeply connected to our economic well-being.
And Southeast Asia really stands out in the research as a region struggling with the environmental consequences of rapid development. Industrialization, urbanization, deforestation, it's a perfect storm.
You've got cities like Jakarta and Bangkok battling air and water pollution. Then deforestation for palm oil plantations adds to both air pollution and habitat loss. And of course, there's the plastic problem.
Indonesia is one of the biggest contributors to marine plastic pollution. That image of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, 3 times the size of France, filled with plastic. It's terrifying. And so much of it originates in Southeast Asia.
It's not just an eyesore. It harms marine life, disrupts ecosystems, and could even end up in our food chain. What we do in one part of the world can have far-reaching consequences.
It shows we're all interconnected. But there are some hopeful signs. One story that struck me was about Singapore. After a terrible haze crisis in 2013, they passed a law holding companies accountable for haze-causing activities, even if those activities happen outside of Singapore.
Right. The 2013 haze crisis was a wake-up call for them. They realized that pollution doesn't respect borders. It's a powerful example of how a single event can lead to significant policy changes.
Could this be a model for other countries? If Singapore can hold companies accountable beyond their borders, could this be a way to tackle pollution that crosses borders? It feels like a pivotal moment, a time to just decide what kind of future we want.
Absolutely. The choices we make now will have lasting impacts. We've seen the devastating costs of inaction, but we've also seen glimpses of hope, moments where collective action has spurred positive change.
That leads us to the next part of our deep dive. We've explored the problem, but what about solutions? What can we as individuals do to fight back against this global threat? Stay with us, because that's exactly what we're about to explore.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the hidden costs of pollution. Before we move on to solutions, I think it's important to really grasp the scale of the economic burden. We talked about trillions of dollars lost globally due to air pollution, but let's put that in perspective. $8.1 trillion. That's more than the entire GDP of many countries combined. It's a silent thief stealing from our present and our future.
A silent thief. That's a powerful image. It makes it real. It's not just an abstract problem. It's affecting real people and real economies right now. And it's not just air pollution either, is it? We saw research on the economic damage from plastic in our oceans. That's pretty scary, too.
Absolutely. The International Union for Conservation of Nature did studies in a few countries, Mozambique, South Africa, Thailand, and Vietnam, and their findings were really striking. They found that marine plastic pollution is costing those countries billions every year in lost revenue from industries like fishing and tourism.
Billions. Wow. That's not just an environmental tragedy, it's an economic crisis too. It's impacting people's livelihoods, their ability to support their families. Makes you wonder why we're not seeing more urgency, more action to fix this.
Well, there are some positive developments. For instance, Thailand has started implementing deposit refund schemes to improve the efficiency of their waste management systems. It's a small step, but it's a step in the right direction.
That's encouraging. But I'm also thinking about some of those research papers we read, the ones where the pollution problem seems almost impossible to solve. It feels like we're running out of time.
There are definitely places where the challenges are deeply rooted. Beijing, China is a prime example. They've been dealing with severe air pollution for decades.
Right. Beijing and smog almost go hand in hand. But didn't we also come across some information about improvements in their air quality?
Yes, actually. There's a fascinating story of progress happening there. Between 2013 and 2020, Beijing managed to reduce its PM2.5 levels, those tiny, harmful particles, by an incredible 35%. It shows what's possible when there's a real effort to tackle pollution.
35%. That's amazing. How did they manage to make such a significant improvement?
They took a multi-pronged approach, addressing the problem from different angles. They moved away from coal as their main energy source and started investing in cleaner alternatives. They implemented tougher emission standards for industries and vehicles and expanded public transportation to reduce reliance on cars.
So it's a combination of policy changes, technology, and changes in individual behavior. It gives me hope that we can turn things around.
It does. But the case of Beijing also teaches us something important. Even with these great results, the fight against pollution is ongoing. As cities grow and change, the pressure on their air quality management systems will only increase.
It reminds us that there's no easy fix. We need to stay vigilant, adapt, and be willing to invest in long-term solutions. Speaking of vigilance, one case study we read really got me thinking about corporate responsibility. It was about a textile factory that boasted about its charitable giving and community involvement, but at the same time, they were ignoring the environmental impact of their operations.
Yes, I remember that one. It's a classic example of greenwashing. Companies trying to make up for their environmental damage by doing good deeds in other areas. Pollution doesn't just vanish because you've made a donation. It's not like a balance sheet where you can cancel out a bad action with a good one.
It feels like they're trying to trick the public to create a good image while hiding the real problems.
Exactly. And in this case, it meant that groundwater contamination was putting the health of local communities at risk. The very people they were supposedly helping with their charity work were being harmed by their environmental practices.
It's a stark reminder that companies need to be held accountable for their environmental practices, not just their public image. We need transparency, stricter regulations, and a system that makes polluters pay for the damage they cause.
I completely agree. And this brings us to a critical point: individual responsibility. We've seen the scale of the problem, the economic costs, the impact on health, and the complexities of corporate accountability. It's easy to feel helpless in the face of all this. So the question becomes, what can we as individuals actually do to make a difference?
That's a great question, and it's one we're going to address in the next part of our deep dive. We're going to explore specific actions, big and small, that can help us move towards a cleaner and healthier future. Welcome back. We've been uncovering the hidden costs of pollution, from health and economic impacts to the complexities of corporate accountability. But it's not all bad news. We've also seen inspiring stories of progress and positive change.
Definitely. And as we move into talking about solutions, I think knowledge is key. We've been using terms like PM2.5 and heavy metals, but let's break those down. Understanding the science behind pollution can help us make smarter choices and push for effective solutions.
I totally agree. Knowledge is power. So let's start with particulate matter. We've mentioned PM2.5 a few times. What exactly is that?
Think of dust particles so tiny you can't even see them. That's particulate matter. Or PM. PM2.5 are the particles less than 2.5 micrometers in diameter. To give you an idea, that's like 30 times smaller than a human hair.
Wow, that's incredibly small. Why are these tiny particles so dangerous?
Because they're so tiny, they can get past our body's natural defenses. They go deep into our lungs and even into our bloodstream. That can trigger a whole bunch of health problems. from breathing issues like asthma to more serious things like heart disease and even cancer.
It's like a sneak attack on our bodies.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just particulate matter, right? We also learned about nitrogen oxides. What do those do?
Nitrogen oxides, or NOx, are gases mainly from cars, factories, and power plants. They're harmful on their own, but what makes them really bad is that they help create ground-level ozone.
Ozone.
Yeah.
But isn't that what protects us from the sun?
Well, there are two types of ozone. The ozone layer high up in the atmosphere is good. It blocks harmful UV rays from the sun. But ground-level ozone is different. That's the ozone created when nitrogen oxides mix with other pollutants in sunlight, and it's a big part of smog. And smog, as we know, is really bad for us.
Right, smog is that thick haze that makes it hard to breathe. So nitrogen oxides basically help create this harmful smog. It's like a chain reaction. What about heavy metals? Those sound pretty scary.
Heavy metals are elements like lead, mercury, cadmium, and arsenic. They can be very toxic, even in small amounts. And the worst part is they stay in the environment for a long time, building up in the soil, water, and even the food we eat.
So it's not just about being exposed right now. It's about long-term contamination that can cause problems down the road. It makes you think about Flint, Michigan again, and those kids exposed to lead in their water.
Exactly. And the effects of heavy metal exposure can be terrible, anything from brain damage and developmental problems to organ failure and cancer. Pollution isn't just about the environment, it's a major health crisis.
Okay, so we've got these tiny particles in our lungs, nitrogen oxides creating smog, and heavy metals contaminating our food and water. It's a pretty bleak picture. But knowing all this, what can we do? How can we fight back against all this pollution?
The good news is we're not helpless. Every choice we make, every action we take can contribute to a cleaner, healthier world. And it all starts with awareness. Now that we understand the different types of pollution and their effects, we can start making better choices in our lives.
So what does that look like? What are some things we can do?
One of the biggest things we can do is cut back on single-use plastics. Every plastic bottle or straw we say no to, every reusable bag we use, all helps stop plastic from ending up in landfills and the ocean.
It's about making those choices, going for the sustainable option whenever we can.
Exactly. And how we get around matters a lot too. Walking, biking, or taking public transportation reduces our carbon footprint. And if we have to drive, choosing fuel-efficient or electric cars can make a difference.
It's thinking about the environment with every decision we make. And sometimes those decisions are about the products we buy.
That's right. Supporting businesses that are eco-friendly is another way to make a statement. Look for companies that are open about their supply chains and manufacturing processes. Companies that are committed to reducing their impact on the environment.
It's about spending our money in a way that reflects our values. And beyond individual actions, we can also push for bigger changes.
For sure. We can support policies that promote clean energy, stricter rules on emissions, and investments in infrastructure that's good for the environment. Contact your elected officials, join groups that are fighting for change, and let your voice be heard.
It's about recognizing that we all have a responsibility to protect our planet, and that when millions of people take action, it can make a real difference.
We've seen it before. Remember the global effort to get rid of those chemicals that were destroying the ozone layer? That shows what's possible when we work together to face a common threat. Pollution might seem like a huge problem, but we have the knowledge, the technology, and increasingly, the will to solve it.
That's what I really hope people take away from this deep dive. It's not about feeling defeated by the problem, but empowered to be part of the solution. Every little thing we do, every choice we make, helps build a cleaner, healthier future for us and for generations to come.
I couldn't agree more. The future of our planet depends on it.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the hidden costs of pollution. We hope you've learned something valuable and feel inspired to make a difference. Remember, the power to create change is in each of us. Until next time, stay curious and stay engaged.